Let's talk about Netflix. I mean, it's pretty hard to imagine a world without it, right? But the story of how this tiny mail-order DVD service took on the giants of entertainment and completely changed how we watch, well, everything, is just incredible. It's a story packed with near bankruptcy, some seriously bold risks, and one massive, history-changing blunder by its biggest rival.
So how does a revolution like this even begin? Well, the legend goes that it all started with a $40 late fee. Yep, $40. The story is that co-founder Reed Hastings rented Apollo 13 from Blockbuster, forgot about it, and got hit with that huge fee. And right there, in that moment of frustration, the idea for Netflix was supposedly born. Now, he's since admitted that story might be a little embellished, but it's the perfect setup because it gets right to the heart of the one thing everybody hated: late fees.
Okay, so let's rewind the tape. We're going all the way back to the beginning, to a time before binge watching was even a phrase. It all started with this one simple but kind of brilliant idea.
So, back in 1997, the founders, Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph, were looking at what Amazon was doing with books and thought, hey, could we do that with movies? Now, you gotta remember, this was the era of VHS tapes, and those things, way too bulky, too fragile, they'd break in the mail for sure. But then there was this new format, the DVD. So, to see if their whole idea could even work, they did a super simple test. They stuck a CD in an envelope and mailed it to one of their own houses. And guess what? It arrived perfectly intact. That was it. That was the aha moment. And just like that, the world's first online DVD rental store was born.
You know, at first, they actually worked just like a regular video store, just online. You'd pay to rent each movie. But the real game changer, the thing that changed everything, came in 1999. They introduced the subscription model. And by 2000, they knew that was the future. So they ditched the paper rental thing and went all in. One flat monthly fee, as many movies as you want, no due dates, and, this was the killer part, absolutely no late fees. That was their secret weapon.
But just having a great idea doesn't mean you're gonna make it, right? In fact, Netflix came incredibly close to failing, more than once. And they were going up against an absolute monster.
I mean, just look at this. In the year 2000, you've got Netflix. They have 0 physical stores. They're losing a ton of money during the dot-com crash. They're just this tiny, struggling startup. And on the other side, you have Blockbuster. Over 9,000 stores all over the planet, a corporate behemoth. This wasn't just David versus Goliath. This was more like an ant versus a steamroller. $50 million. That's the number. Netflix was in so much trouble, they were running out of cash so fast that they flew to Blockbuster's headquarters with a proposal. They said, buy us for $50 million. We'll become your online brand. We'll be Blockbuster.com. It was basically their last-ditch effort to survive. And what did Blockbuster CEO John Antioco do? He pretty much laughed him out of the room. He thought the whole internet thing was just a fad, that Netflix was this tiny, niche business that would never amount to anything. He completely dismissed the idea and sent them packing. It has to be one of the biggest business blunders of all time. So, they survived that rejection, but they were nowhere near safe. The dot-com crash was brutal. They had to lay off a third of their employees just to stay afloat. They managed to recover over the next decade, but their next huge crisis? Oh, this one was a doozy. And this time, they had no one to blame but themselves. In 2011, they decided to split their service in two, streaming on one side and the good old DVDs on the other, rebranding the DVD service with the truly terrible name Quickster. 800,000. That's how many subscribers bailed in just a few months. The backlash was immediate and fierce. Customers saw it as a confusing, sneaky price hike, and they were furious. It got so bad that Netflix had to slam on the brakes, issue a massive public apology, and scrap the whole Quickster plan before it did any more damage.
Okay, so they survived Blockbuster, they survived the dot-com bust, and they even survived their own terrible Quickster idea. Now we get to the fun part. This is where Netflix makes the two huge pivots that would not only save the company, but completely redefine entertainment as we know it. So, pivot number 1, streaming. And what's wild is that their first idea was actually to build a physical box, a Netflix box, that would download movies overnight. Kind of clunky, right? But then they saw YouTube explode onto the scene and had a realization. The future wasn't another piece of hardware. It was software that could be everywhere. So in 2007, they launched their Watch Now service. And that little hardware project they were working on, they spun it off into its own company. You might have heard of it. It's called Roku. Crazy, right? And that brings us to pivot number 2. And honestly, this one was maybe even riskier than streaming. They realized if they were always just licensing shows from other studios,
they would always be at their mercy. So they decided to make their own stuff. They went out and bet $100 million on their first major original series, House of Cards, outbidding giants like HBO to get it. This wasn't just a cool idea. It was about survival. They had to control their own destiny.
And with House of Cards, they didn't just make a great show, they changed how we watch shows. Instead of making everyone wait week to week for a new episode, they just dropped the entire season all at once. And just like that, the binge model was born. They had looked at their own data and saw that people loved watching multiple DVD episodes in one sitting. So they thought, why not lean into it? For decades, TV schedules were built around advertisers. Netflix built their model around the viewer.
So these two huge gambles, streaming and original content, they didn't just pay off. They basically set off an earthquake that ripped through the entire media landscape, and nothing has been the same since.
And the proof is right here. Just look at this growth. When they launched streaming back in 2007, they had about 7.5 million subscribers. Not bad. But by 2013, after House of Cards, boom, 44 million. And just look at where that line is headed. We're talking hundreds of millions of paid subscribers worldwide. The growth was just astronomical.
They also created this cultural phenomenon people call the Netflix effect. This is when a show that's maybe doing okay on regular TV gets added to Netflix, and then suddenly it just explodes into a massive hit. The most famous example, of course, is Breaking Bad. That show's ratings were decent, but after previous seasons hit Netflix, its live audience literally doubled, turning it into one of the biggest and most talked about shows of all time. And finally, they went global. And I mean, they went global. On a single day in 2016, they just flipped a switch and launched in 130 new countries all at once. This move completely shattered the old way of distributing shows, where you'd have to wait months or even years for a show to air in your country. Netflix created the world's first truly global TV network. It's the reason a show made in South Korea, like Squid Game, can become a worldwide sensation practically overnight. So when you look at the whole story, it's just wild. From mailing DVDs in those iconic red envelopes to producing Oscar-winning films and global hit shows, Netflix didn't just survive, it rewrote the rules for everyone. It created the very streaming world that all of its competitors now have to live in. Which really only leaves one question. What will they redefine next?